I'm Gina Kavesh, the Executive Director of the Way Foundation, and you're listening to the Group Ride Podcast.
Welcome to episode 22 of the Group Ride Podcast. This is a podcast for cycling in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. I'm your host, Wes Salmon, and today on the show, we sit down with Gina Kavesh from Cycle the Wave, a women's-only ride in Bellevue, Washington, focused on ending domestic violence. After that, I take a look at the rapidly evolving landscape of bike sharing in Seattle, and we take a quick field trip to Southern California to see how one of their bike share systems compares. Clip in, riders, the Group Ride Podcast is rolling out. This week, the next chapter of the Seattle bike share saga began with two new companies dropping off bikes all around the Seattle downtown area. The two companies setting up shop are Spin and LimeBike. You can probably tell the two systems apart by their choice of color for their brand. Spin provides bright orange bikes, while LimeBike, appropriately enough, offers bright green bikes. For a full rundown of exactly how these bike shares work, I highly recommend checking out the Seattle Bike Blog's updated bike share guide, which gives a great overview of how to use both systems. You can find the URL in the show notes for this episode. The quick summary is this. Both Spin and LimeBike rely on a smartphone app where you sign in for their service, find a bike no matter where it's parked, and unlock it remotely for a small fee. Both systems charge $1 per 30 minutes of riding and are free roaming, meaning they do not need to be returned to a specific bike share location. With that said, however, you will need to take care to park them in appropriate places set aside by the city. The general rule of thumb is, don't leave it in the way of other stuff, which should be a no-brainer. The other fee you may need to worry about is the standard King County fine for not wearing a helmet, which is $30. Both companies plan to have hundreds of bikes in circulation during the 6-month trial period put in place by the City of Seattle, and a number of other companies have also applied for permits to participate in the program. Now that I have all the facts out of the way, let's get into my opinion about this new bike share system. Simply put, I think it's fantastic, and this model is proven to work in other areas of the country and the world. However, there are a few issues that need to be addressed for these systems to work well in Seattle. First is the helmet law. It was bad for Pronto, and it will be bad for Spin and LimeBike. If Seattle chooses to aggressively enforce the existing law, you will quickly see these systems hit with the same snag as Pronto. It will be a backup bike for someone who already owns a bike and rides. It will be a convenience for an existing rider who has a helmet rather than a viable transportation option for anyone who wants to ride. I won't get too deep into the helmet debate here. You can listen to episode 14 of the show and get about 45 minutes of just that. Suffice to say that regardless of the benefits during a bike crash, the existence of mandatory helmet laws keeps some people off bikes, and that's bad for a system which will need as many people as possible participating to be successful. The second concern I have is something that faced Pronto as well, which is the hilly nature of Seattle's downtown. Pronto spent countless thousands of dollars each week balancing out their bike share systems to keep bikes from pulling up in key destinations. Many of these destinations were at the lower elevations of Seattle. For a stationless bike share, this is even more problematic because bikes ridden downhill will now be dispersed even more broadly than the Pronto stations. Now there are some solutions for this, including the old get a truck and pick up the bikes and move them around as needed. But there are also others. One I've seen in other countries was an incentive program for riding and parking a bike up a hill or into an area which is short on available bikes. This will not fix the problem entirely, but it would be a creative start, and since the system is app-based anyway, the idea of making a game of it with points will appeal to some riders. And finally, my last concern with these systems in Seattle, sabotage. During the 6-month trial period, the city will be evaluating the effectiveness and the compliance of the stationless bike shares. They'll be tracking usage as well as violations of existing laws and bike share permit regulations. It's the latter that I'm concerned with most. Since these bikes are not locked to anything, they can be picked up and moved wherever, and that could mean people doing some pretty stupid things with them, or purposely creating a nuisance with these bikes in hopes of swaying Seattle's decision after the 6-month trial is over. I'm hoping that doesn't become an issue, but I also hope that no one throws nails down for large event rides or goes out and rolls coal on cyclists riding up hills at 2 a.m., but sadly this stuff happens, and it's done by people who hate bikes. So if you see a Spin or a LimeBike parked in a bad spot, take 5 seconds out of your day and move it. And if you see other shenanigans with these new stationless bike share bikes, report it. Remember, every new bike on the road makes all bikes on the road a little bit safer. Even if you never plan on using a Spin or a LimeBike, you benefit by their success. On the topic of big city bike sharing systems, my wife and I recently went to Long Beach, California, and she took the opportunity to use the Long Beach bike share system while I was at other meetings. Here's her take on their system. I am here with my wife and co-producer, Summer. We recently went down to Long Beach, California, and you were able to use their bike share service down there. I wanted you to kind of give an overview about your experience using their bike share, signing up and riding, and what you thought.
It was really easy. I downloaded the app, which when you create an account on there, you have access to many other bike sharers. So if we had gone into like West Hollywood, I think they have one. But I downloaded the app, set up my account. Since I'm a student, got a student discount, which gave me 90 free minutes. And I was able, I used all of those. I think I only had to add like $7.50 on to kind of have on there to supplement anything that I went over. But it was super easy to set up. I basically, in my jeans and my flip-flops, and had my stuff on in my backpack, and I walked out there and got one, and it was pretty easy. A few little hiccups on my end, but just from user error. But I got it going pretty quick, and no helmet, which was a weird thing, living in King County, and that's a must here. And I didn't travel with one, and there's no law there that you have to wear one, so I basically was just going for it. I rode down to the Queen Mary, so I think overall I rode 2 separate times. Total is 6 miles-ish. And it's pretty cool infrastructure down there. They have protected bike lanes and pretty easy access to the bike trail that's along the shore. And so I rode that down past like the outlets and all the way out. And the challenge was the Queensway, which is for me, I don't ride that often. So it was a little hilly there, but the bike did actually have gears. So I was able to go into the granny gear to get up it, and I was quite proud of myself. Got down there and cooled off a little bit and puttered around by the Queen Mary, and then rode back and just tooled around the city, and it was pretty cool.
So you had mentioned that the bike earlier in our conversation came with its own lock.
Oh,
so
yeah.
How'd that work?
Yeah, that was really cool. So it has a basically built-in U-lock, and so on the back of it, there's a computer with GPS tracking. And so yeah, you basically punch in your PIN, it releases the U-lock, you pull that out, and it has a little hanging holder for it, and then away you go. And actually on the way back, because it was quite humid that day, I was extremely thirsty and a little sweaty, so I stopped in at a Starbucks down by the shopping center and locked it up at just a normal bike rack. And as I was almost ready to walk away, it started beeping at me, and I was like, what is happening? And it was because I didn't have it locked properly. And so it basically alerted me that, hey, this could get stolen if you don't do this properly. So I put it on there correctly, and they have a spot where you can hit hold. So what it does is it keeps that bike reserved for you. So another patron can't just, come and enter their code and, take what was your bike and leave you kind of stranded. So when I came out after resting for a little bit, my bike was there, punched in my code, and away I went.
So this was your first bike share experience. Would you do it again?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not much of a hill climber. So with the new bike shares that are in Seattle, I'd be a little worried about the ultra hilly areas down there. But if it was in, I would love it if the Eastside had it, like in Redmond and possibly even Bellevue. It'd be kind of cool to just tool around the little downtown area. But I would definitely choose the flatter areas because I don't know how well I personally would do, but I'm sure those bikes can handle it.
I'm in Bellevue, Washington, talking with the executive director of the Wave Foundation, Gina Kavesh, to talk about an upcoming ride they have, but also talk a little bit about her cycling career and what she's doing in cycling these days. So welcome to the show, Gina.
Thank you very much.
First off, give listeners a little bit of a background on your cycling and your cycling in the area.
I've been cycling in the Seattle area since 1989-90. Started riding in the Bay Area, moved up here and started riding and found a Cascade group to ride with and got recruited to do STP and Ramrod and all the classics in the area. And then at some point in 93, someone told me that I should race my bike. And I've been racing my bike locally and nationally since. Mostly now locally, since I'm a little bit on the old side of things.
So what's been your best result racing?
My best result racing, it kind of depends on the era. This year I actually got on the podium at Master Nationals on the time trial, which I was pretty happy about. But I've had lots of results in my previous years when I was younger and more competitive.
So are you only road racing, or are you doing cross and mountain bike and all kinds of stuff?
I have dabbled in them all. I used to do a lot of track. I used to do a fair amount of cross. Now I just pretty much ride the road.
Okay.
Just bandwidth.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to get out on the road
Yeah.
than it is to go and find a muddy trail somewhere to practice mountain biking.
Well, and mountain biking, we have great mountain biking around here. It's just more a matter of, like you said, some time, but also skill set and interest level.
So you're also on the board of the USA Cycling organization.
Yes.
What do you do for those guys?
So USA Cycling is the national governing body under the USOC. So they govern all things cycling in the country, and that then goes up to the international level for the International Olympic Committee as well. I'm on the board of directors as the representative from the road committee. The USAC has sport committees that represent all the disciplines and subsets within that, and I was elected from that group to serve on the board of USAC. So I'm a sounding board. It's a board of directors like any organization, and I like to look at myself as the one very much person on the board who really understands the local bike racer.
Right.
Many people on the board are either at the pro level or have been only at the pro level, or are very passionate people with a lot of money that really have never competed at what I consider grassroots racing.
Great. And you're also the president of the Washington State Bicycle Association.
Correct.
What do you do for that organization?
So that's another nonprofit. It's almost volunteer, but not quite. And that's the arm that represents USA Cycling locally here, but also helps facilitate bike racing, whether it's under the USAC or it's not under some other sanctioning or just self-run. So we coordinate a calendar. We put together a best all-around series. We do some championship events. We support a youth camp in Cle Elum that happens every year called the Larry Kemp Camp in honor of someone who was killed. We support juniors that are trying to come up through the sport, cyclocross, mountain bike. So we have all our fingers. It's more of a facilitating group than it's an actual doing group. So we work with the promoters, the officials, anybody who wants to do a bike racing thing.
And finally, you're also part of the Wave Foundation. Tell me a little bit about that organization.
The Wave Foundation is a 501c3, a nonprofit that is focused on changing the dialogue on domestic and sexual violence. It's a foundation that was founded about 5 years ago, and it was an office. It grew out of the event that we're going to talk about later today, which is Cycle the Wave. And the evolution of the organization has been in the last 18 months is that we have brought in our own programming so that we are actually in schools talking about healthy relationships and red signs and how to change the behaviors with your peers or with yourself to recognize if you're in an unhealthy relationship or if you have peers that are in an unhealthy relationship, and also the red flags that you could be putting yourself at risk in a situation. So bystander intervention and boundary setting. It's actually really cool, and we do it at all levels of school. I would call our sweet spot middle school, high school, and college. We're really well represented at the University of Washington, that we're on their campus heavily in the fall and heavily in the spring because they have some motivation for sexual assault awareness and domestic violence awareness. And then school districts, we're in Seattle, Mercer Island, Bellevue, Shoreline, gone south. Keep growing.
Yeah,
awesome.
I was going to ask, do you guys have plans to continue to grow outward in the Pacific Northwest?
That's the hope. Right now, the bandwidth is we're trying to also build our instructor base, and we have one program that is really more about the relationship piece and can be taught by anybody we can teach. And we get actually a lot of University of Washington students who come to us after being in part of our program, asking to be involved, which is really cool. Then we have a specific program that is more specifically female focused, or I should say those who identify as female as well, that has a self-defense element. And so bringing those instructors in online, they have to have some martial arts background. So
okay.
We have twofold. The piece without martial arts is easier to expand. The piece with martial arts, we have to find the right instructors.
Right. Definitely a great cause. And you guys put on a number of events throughout the year to help fund this cause. One of them is a cycling event called Cycle the Wave. Tell me the background of this event. I believe it's been going on for about 10 years now.
This is going to be our 10th year of the ride, and the history is we are in Bellevue, Washington, and Lakemont specifically, and there was a group of ladies called the Lakemont Cycling Club, and they wanted to take action against domestic violence, and they decided that they should do a bike ride. And so in 2008, they put together a bike ride, and they decided to make it all women. And I ran into the organization in that first year because I live nearby, and I saw all these women riding up in miserable weather, coming up Lakemont, then going up Tiger Mountain.
Well,
and
Lakemont is no picnic in great weather.
Right. Well, there was the backside of Lakemont.
It's still hard.
Yeah. Well, then they went up, I think they went up Cougar.
Oh, wow.
They went down Montreux. I mean, the first route, when I found out about it, I was like, oh my God, I couldn't do that. And from there, they just kind of kept growing. And the initial years, all the money went to what at that time was Eastside Domestic Violence or LifeWire. As the event got footing, and it was all volunteer run too. It was amazing what they did. As it started to grow and get to 400, 500, 600 women, they realized that they wanted to not just give all the money to one organization. They wanted to have a bit broader reach because the riders were coming from all over the state.
Right.
And that's how the foundation got started, was how do these women who are very passionate about this cause support agencies that are working with the actual survivors or trying to do prevention. And we now, on average, are 900 to 1,000 women riders.
That's a big ride.
Yeah, last year we brought in a walk, and for the first year that had 100 walkers. We're hoping to get to 200 walkers this year. So we say, there's not everybody rides, but everybody walks.
Everybody does walk.
Yes. So it's actually an amazing event, whether people are watching it or partaking in it, because when you see that many women supporting each other in doing a physical activity that many of them never think they could do. I mean, we have routes that are 12 miles, 29, 45, and 70 miles. And the person who's doing that 12-mile ride, many of them have never done 12 miles.
Right.
And when they finish and cross the line, just looking exalted, just so happy they just did this. They just accomplished something. You can almost sense that empowerment that they just have about their self-confidence, and that also feeds into our education program.
Yeah.
We want to empower women to take charge of themselves and their awareness and their surroundings, and to be confident to know what their gut is telling them, follow it. Because that's one of the biggest steps.
Well, riding a bike is super empowering.
Yes.
for anyone who doesn't feel like they can actually ride a bike long distances, and then once they do it, it's one of those things that you just get addicted to really quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned you guys have 4 routes. One of them is a 12-mile route, which is pretty flat, but you guys also have flattish.
Flattish.
For the east side, is
Yeah.
just about as flat as you can get, but it still has elevation gains. The 70-mile route, it's a pretty robust route.
The 70-mile route is not for the weak of heart.
Yeah, that's a legit ride.
It's a legit ride. It goes north. In some of the familiar places, you'll intersect with Hollywood Hill. You'll end up over by Trilogy. You'll drop back down by Marymore. All routes start from Bellevue College,
Okay.
by the way.
Yeah.
Then you're going to go up Sahalee, and you're going to be up on the plateau, and then you're going to wind your way back down towards Issaquah, then come back up Newport to get back to Bellevue College. I think it's close to 4,000 feet of climbing.
That's a good tour of what the east side has to offer in regards to climbing.
Yes, and actually it's always interesting because some compatriots from the bike racing community will come out, some women who are excellent riders, and when they finish that 70 miles, they're like, that was hard.
I thought this was a charity ride.
Yes.
So you guys have a number of different sponsors that help out throughout the ride in giving great rest stop support as well as SAG support. So it's a fully supported ride for women only. Tell me a little bit about the final party at the end. What are you guys doing at the end to make this one special?
Well, we kind of pull out all stops. We will have cheer squads sending the riders out, and we'll have cheer squads out on the course, and then we have cheer squads when you're coming in.
Okay.
And that's engaging many of the high schools in the area. And we also have some guys out there cheering as well. Then at the Finish Line Festival, we have a John Duggan-sponsored beer and wine garden where fundraisers can earn some free beer and wine, as well as a beer glass or a wine glass.
Great.
We have assorted booths from a lot of the local community-based cycling organizations, Tonic, Biker Chick Jewelry. So a lot of the organizations that people have seen or maybe have run into their product that is more women-focused. And then we have some bigger sponsors. TAI, Therapeutic Associates, is out there. They're a supporter, and they'll have a booth out there giving some people some PT advice and or looking at a little bit of bike fits. Seattle Mini's been a terrific supporter. Like I said, John Duggan, KeyBank. I mean, Bellevue College is an amazing supporter. I mean, they really go inside out for us.
That's great. For someone who is interested in joining the ride, do they have to fundraise?
They do not.
But they should.
Well, of course I'm going to tell them they should.
Right.
But that's the other piece of our ride is we want to get women on bikes. I mean, I'd like to get them walking too, but to get women out in this environment, and so registering is all you're required to do.
Okay.
Your registration does go to your fundraising totals, but obviously the biggest difference is for us is people who do fundraise.
Right.
Because that's really where the biggest impact can be. And this is a cause and an issue that is pretty relevant now. We all know somebody, or we all know somebody who knew somebody who has either been in an unhealthy relationship or has been on the bad end of a sexual assault. And unfortunately, we read about these things way too often. And so our hope is to change the next generation. So as one of our guys' instructors says, is he just wants to know what to do about that guy.
Yeah. So you guys do have a fundraising goal. What's your goal this year?
Our goal this year is $225,000.
Fantastic. How close are you so far?
We're barely making a dent, but we're early.
Okay.
I mean,
and this podcast is going to help a ton.
I hope so.
Positively.
I hope so. I mean, we are about 15% into it, but I mean, all of us, everybody who's listening is a cyclist, so we all kind of hold off, right?
Yeah.
So this is our peak of when registration is going to start to bump up and people will start to do the fundraising and stuff. And we know we have a lot, there's a lot of people out there doing rides that are asking for money. So our uniqueness is the all-women element. We're also mid-September. Which is after the other events, which is nice.
So you got about 2 months to sign up and start your fundraising, so plenty of time.
Yes, and we have, like I said, we have some fun fundraising goals or things to give away. Like if you get to our second level, which is only $250, we have some really cool branded socks that go with the jersey that we sell.
Great.
For the top fundraisers, we have a quilted vest this year, so we're meeting both the walkers and the riders' needs. And then we have some great team competitions. Top fundraising teams will get a private special food that I didn't even talk about the food at the finish line.
Let's talk about the food.
We have amazing sponsors that come out. So we have the Sweet Shop, which will have all sorts of desserts, nothing but bundt cakes, Vivaco chocolate, Top Pot donuts. And we're looking for more.
You're speaking my language at this point.
Then we also have entrees. So PCC this year is providing most of the entrees. So they're bringing some salads, they're bringing some protein-based food, and then we have some asks out to some other kind of local companies for whatever we can come up with. So you actually have a decent small bite meal as well as that. And then we have lots of samplers out there during the course of the day. Our rest stops all have themes. This year we have a company called Arctic Apples that is hosting our largest rest stop, and they'll have apples everywhere. So lots of good food and wine.
The ride is on September 17th of this year. It starts and ends at Bellevue College.
Correct.
And it's women's only, but men are encouraged to come and help volunteer.
Absolutely.
And cheer on the ladies as they ride between 12 and 70 miles and walk around 4K, I think it is?
Yeah, about 4 miles.
Yeah. Could you do both? Could you walk and ride?
You could probably, depending how quickly you got through a loop. I mean, there are some people who do the 12-mile ride to do with a friend that is doing their first ride, and then they go do the walk. So it's totally feasible. If you're a fast rider, you can do the loop around Lake Sammamish, 29 miles, and probably get the walk in. The Finish Line Festival starts about 11:30 and starts to shut down about 3:30 or 4.
Great.
The first riders are on the road by 6:30, 6:45 for that longer distance. We look at and try to give a reasonable amount, knowing that not everyone's going to be going 18 miles an hour or something.
Right. So your website for folks that want to find out more information is?
cyclethewave.org.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This was fantastic. Hopefully everyone listening either encourages someone they know to ride or signs up themselves.
That'd be terrific. We'd love to see them all out there.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to episode 22 of the Group Ride Podcast. To send me feedback about the show, ask a question, or request that I cover a specific topic, you can contact me on Twitter and Instagram at the Group Ride Pod and on Facebook at the Group Ride Podcast. If you want some cool Group Ride Podcast swag, make sure you sign up for the Group Ride Club. Membership is as cheap as $1. You can find out more information at thegroupride.com/club. For our new listeners this week, you can check out the previous 21 episodes at our website, thegroupride.com. Thanks again for listening to the show. I'm your host, Wes Salmon. See you on the next Group Ride.